So the man who's the champion of Alpe d'Huez is Marco Pantani. Now, can he do it all again? We stay in the Alps as we move on now to Courchevel, a place we haven't been before. And the party set to continue in the Alps today with three major climbs. They start with the Col de Glandon, they go on to the Col de la Madeleine, and then they finish here at Courchevel. It's a climb never used before in the Tour de France, and I think it's as hard as the climb of Alpe d'Huez itself. What are the chances now of Marco Pantani winning again today? Well, here's Paul Sherwin now to assess the appeal and the climbing ability of the pocket dynamo from Italy.
Most of Marco Pantani's appeal actually comes from his look. His shaved head, his large ears and an earring have earned him several nicknames over the last few years. Names like Elephantino and more recently the Pirate. But yesterday when he came to the Alpe d'Huez, he had a mission. As the climb started, he threw away his hat and he was ready for the show. And after a series of attacks, he ended up alone in the lead with just his supporters chasing him. His advantage comes from the fact that he weighs in at just 56 kilos, making him at least 10 kilos lighter than most other riders. Once he's on the climb, his power-to-weight ratio approaches that which the stronger men have on the flat. When you combine this to his amazing courage and ability to accelerate again and again, his attacks become almost overwhelming. However, like most of these light riders, they only have the strength to do this on one climb. To win today, Pantani must conserve his energy over the first two climbs of the day, saving it for one final assault to Courchevel.
Well, this is the situation. Virenque on the King of the Mountains has 299 points ahead of his teammate Brochard, and Ullrich quite a long way behind already. So I think it's pretty safe to say that barring accidents, Virenque will run out that record winner of the King of the Mountains 4 times straight. Now, the Mountains, Paul, are with us again, and again Festina are in charge.
For the first climb of the day, the Col de Glandon, and there are 6 riders from Festina in this group, so they've obviously gone out on a mission today. They want to try and worry the yellow jersey of Jan Ullrich.
Well, here's the descent, and here's Jan Ullrich. Now, we've been a little bit worried about the way Jan Ullrich has been going down hills. Now, he had some food in his mouth there, but he is very questionable on the way down the mountains.
Well, he's taken terrible lines around those corners there, and if he's not careful, he's going to miss the back wheel of Richard Virenque. And in fact, Virenque's opened up a gap on the descent, and he has 2 teammates with him. And now's the time that, in fact, Jan Ullrich has decided not to chase them down. He's going to wait for his teammates behind.
And this is the train coming up. It's a small group here, and they've picked up Jan Ullrich. He's got some strength in that group, but he's allowed a gap of around a minute now to open. And that's causing Bjarne Riis to have to do some work in-house, as it were.
Well, now there's a time when Bjarne Riis really has to be the teammate to his own man, Jan Ullrich. But here on the climb of the Col de la Madeleine, it's Richard Virenque who's blown away all of his teammates, and I think he's decided now that he wants to go it alone.
Well, there's the Col. They've done 86 kilometres, but this is a 21-kilometre climb at an average gradient of 7.6%. And I should also tell you that at the start this morning, one man missing at the signing in was Luc Leblanc from the Polti team. He's been trying to retire for a couple of days, but the team has made him continue. But today, he didn't come out.
Well, I think he's had a hard season, you know. He's always been dogged by injuries. That crash in the Tour of Italy when he hit the wall, and then in the early part of this year's Tour de France, he went down a couple of times too, and I think it all got just too much for him.
Right, on to the Madeleine now. A very, very long climb. It's an all-category climb, so it rates amongst the best in the Tour. But even so, Paul, well, you should know it. You packed in the Tour de France on this climb. You know how difficult it is.
I actually abandoned at the bottom of the Col de la Madeleine. It's a very difficult climb at the bottom part. Climbs up for 21 kilometres. Unfortunately for Richard Virenque, there's just 1 kilometre remaining. And then a very tough descent indeed. But I think the hardest part about today's stage is the fact that there are 3 major climbs, and the stage is only 148 kilometres long. You're either going uphill or down dale.
Just listen to the noise of the crowd here. Here's Ullrich coming up the climb with Riis. They're running at around about 20 seconds behind at the 1 kilometre point. Fernando Escartin is here as well. And so he's actually climbing nicely into the overall picture now. He just seems to follow wheels, but he's never far away from the action.
Well, this was remarkable. Richard Virenque always does something very special in the mountains. I'm not quite sure that his tactics are the right ones today, because from the top of this climb, he still has almost 70 kilometres to go to the finish, and it's a very long descent down into the valley before you have to climb up again to Courchevel.
Well, having won the Glandon, now he's won the Col de la Madeleine. He knows now he's going to be the King of the Mountains by the end of his little journey through the Alps here. He's riding extremely well. I'm not so sure it was a wise move to go it alone for Richard Virenque, because he is really taking on an awful lot. But even so, he is forcing yet again Ullrich to go on the defensive. And it's good to see them not giving him an easy ride at all.
Most certainly, the Festina riders came out this morning with an idea that they would try and worry him. This is Laurent Dufaux, one of the early riders, putting the pressure on. But one man who is missing from all of this action is yesterday's winner, Marco Pantani.
And, well, as you said, he's a man that chose his climb. He's a powerhouse on a single climb, but over a series of climbs, he hasn't taken part in the action. He climbed up to third place overall, though, and I'm sure that's where he would love to finish in Paris. Dropping back to the second group there only briefly, as we now see the descent here of the Col de la Madeleine. Very dangerous, but very fast descent. And one thing Richard Virenque can do almost as well as he can climb, he can go down quickly.
Well, I never would have expected to see Jan Ullrich put under pressure on the descent, but on the final climb he made a brilliant move by working along with his teammates, and he finally pulled back Richard Virenque. So with 10 kilometres remaining on the climb up to Courchevel, there are two leaders, Richard Virenque and the yellow jersey of Jan Ullrich.
Well, when we drove up here early in the day, Paul Sherwin did say that he thought this climb was desperately hard. It started around 14 kilometres from the end of the day and continues literally to the finishing line, because we are behind a small airport, which is for light aeroplanes which fly to the top of Courchevel in the winter, many of them carrying some high-powered people like the royal family of Britain, because this is one of their favourite ski resorts.
Well, Bjarne Riis once again on the slopes of these mountains, just trying to survive, I think, through the Tour de France this year. At the front there, though, Jan Ullrich is doing a brilliant job. He's controlled all the attacks of Richard Virenque. I think Virenque now certainly playing for that long breakaway of his, and it's going to be very difficult for him to survive another attack from Jan Ullrich. But I think, Phil, the worst thing about this climb is once you get into the town here, you think, oh, it's all over, I've done it, I've got to the summit, because you've read the book and the book says you finish in Courchevel. But there's another 4 kilometres after the mountain top here up to the summit.
Yes, it does indeed. It twists right around behind the town as they climb steadily up. But I think today Jan Ullrich will need to go and shake hands with Bjarne Riis, because Riis brought him back into this race after the descent of the Col de Glandon. He got him back up to the leaders before the climb of the Col de la Madeleine. Now Riis seems capable of looking after himself. There's Peter Luttenberger just latching on. There's Marco Pantani. He's got himself a little bit more back into the picture now. Casagrande in the red cap as well. But they're all losing time to Ullrich and Virenque. And there is Alano too, so he's having a little bit better of a time in the Alps compared with those of the Pyrenees.
Well, I think the repetitive nature of all these very big climbs really has been too hard for the pure climbers of the Tour de France. The two men at the front, they look quite comfortable, and once again Escartine now setting the pace, trying to pull himself back into the race, because he in fact is looking to finish first Spaniard in the Tour, but he's not making any inroads into the lead of these two men.
Well, as they continue to climb, Pantani's group is timed at 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Here it is, and Luttenberger is now in trouble. He was favoured for a top 5 finish at this year's Tour, but he has never really been in the frame.
That's a horrible little place on the road there. They actually turn through the town, which is a shortcut. It's actually not quite as long, but it's horrendously steep.
Now we're outside the town with the two leaders. Very soon we should catch a glimpse of the little airstrip lying up by the summit of the climb. Ullrich will feel very content with the way the race is going now. He's got himself nicely ensconced behind Richard Virenque. Virenque doing a lot of the work, and happy to do so, I think, now, because he's consolidating his second place in the Tour.
Well, it's remarkable how this Tour de France is turning round and round about, because yesterday it was the day for Marco Pantani and Virenque was dropped in the climbs. Now it's the other way round, but as always in the climbs, Bjarne Riis is suffering. The victory certainly must go down to these two men, unless Fernando Escartine can do something very special. 5 kilometres remaining for the group with Marco Pantani.
Bjarne Riis also finding the pace a little bit too hot now, as Escartine has decided it's time to come out of the shadow of the wheels and do some racing for himself. He's now gone clear of everybody else. Escartine will now be the third man on the road, behind these two who simply can't go any quicker, and they seem to be matched pedal for pedal.
Well, Escartine really has been a great rider. He won the Tour of Catalonia just before the Tour de France here, riding very well indeed. He's got the form to come to the Tour de France, and he's looking for what for him would be a podium position, a place in the top 3. He's trying to get into contention, but you know, it's so difficult over these last couple of kilometres. You see how the road just zigzags up the mountain, and there's the airstrip that you were talking about, and the finish is just on the other side. In fact, the top side of the airstrip.
Right round the hilly side of it, I'm afraid. But now Richard Virenque continues to set the pace. Oh, dear me, well, that's how you're not supposed to support the riders in the Tour de France. As we come up towards what will be the last kilometre pretty soon, there's the runway off to our right. They land the planes uphill, so they stop pretty suddenly because there isn't much of a runway up here.
Richard Virenque still climbing with energy, still climbing with a lot of emotion, forcing himself to set the pace at the front, and always Ullrich looking comfortable, sitting down in the saddle, climbing with the power that's coming from the lower part of his back and his thighs. He really is a powerful man. I think he's managed to convert all of this power-to-weight ratio into a climbing ability, but the fans, they're certainly going wild.
They found the way up this mountain because this road was closed fairly early on today. There's no other way to get to this point. And I should imagine tonight it's going to be blocked up as all the people and the race tour tries to get down. Ready for tomorrow. It's a long, steady climb now. Richard Virenque has been superb in this tour. He must be ruining the day that Ullrich came to form like this, because otherwise I think the French would have been cheering a French winner of the Tour de France. Into the tunnel. We have to go over the top. There's the runway over the top of the tunnel. And very shortly, the two leaders back into our view.
Well, quite remarkable to see these two riders fighting it out, and I wonder who's going to come out of the tunnel first. Maybe they'll use this as an opportunity to launch a slight attack, but no. The two of them are still together, and still as before, Richard Virenque is on the front, and he must be wondering how he's going to outsprint Jan Ullrich when it comes to the summit, because Ullrich has been content over these last few kilometres just to sit there in the slipstream of the Frenchman, letting the Frenchman in the polka dot jersey set all of the pace.
He's got his margin of 6 minutes plus, so he knows as long as he stays alongside Richard Virenque, he has no problems whatsoever. 23 years of age, Jan Ullrich, almost the identical age of Jacques Anquetil, in whose city this Tour de France started. And Jacques was 23 when he won his first Tour de France as well. What a remarkable coincidence.
Well, after the ride that Virenque has done today, going away with all of his team on the first climb of the day, the Col de Glandon, and then attacking alone on the Col de la Madeleine, I think the French are certainly going to rise to who they will find as their new hero.
Now, Richard Virenque just checking here, getting a little bit twitchy. He's made the pace all the way up, and I'm wondering whether, in fact, Jan Ullrich will pay him a sort of salute here and allow him to win this stage, or whether he'll try to take it off him in the sprint.
Well, I think Ullrich is a winner. He wants to win the stage here. He'll be looking for any mistakes by Richard Virenque, and I'm sure he will try and come around him if he can.
Well, Richard has never won a stage of the Tour de France in the Alps, and this is his moment if he can hang on, but he's made all of the running. There'd be no reason for Jan Ullrich to come and do any of the pacemaking. He's the man who has got to be placed under attack. He doesn't need to attack anymore. And now the sprint has started. Little rise towards the line here. The legs of Virenque, the first to appear. He still stares Jan Ullrich in the eye. No contest. Ullrich, I think, has played the honest soldier there. He's allowed Virenque his win in the Alps. The first time he's ever done that. Here comes Escartine. So he is finishing in third place, less than a minute behind. As we look further down the line now, we've got Dufault and Bjarne Riis here. But they again have conceded a first slice of time. Dufault coming away for fourth. He'll be very happy with that because he knows Virenque's up there. He won't know yet he's won, but he will in a few seconds. And Riis fifth, a minute and 24 back. And so the rest of the riders coming in as they head up towards the line. You know, this has been a strange race today. Marco Pantani is going to finish in 6th place, and he will be over 3 minutes back. And so he might retain third overall, or he might in fact now concede that to Bjarne Riis. Number one, now it either means number one for France, number one in the Alps, or number one this tour for Richard Virenque. But there's the result. Ullrich second, Escartine, Dufault, Riis, and Marco Pantani gets the 6th place. Now, the overall situation is that Riis does come up into 3rd place and Pantani drops to 4th as we stay in the Alps now and continue to Morzine. So far, they haven't been able to crack the German phenomenon Jan Ullrich. After 2 days tracing the stunning mountain roads of the Alps, which have rarely looked better, Ullrich has taken everything thrown at him. Yesterday, was there a slight chink in his shining armour? Perhaps. He couldn't descend with the best. Well, today, the vicious climb of the Col de Jouplan is followed by 12 kilometres of downhill. It's a technical drop to the finish, calling for great skill. Ullrich must stay alert now. Overall, the battle is still intense between Bjarne Riis and Marco Pantani in the race for 3rd, while Abraham Olano and Fernando Escartine are also engaged in a battle for 5th.
So Jan Ullrich is still looking good to become the first German rider ever to win the Tour de France. But of the tens of thousands of spectators who stand by the roadside every day, well, not surprisingly, their pin-up boy is French.
Richard Virenque.
Virenque. Oui, Virenque.
Virenque.
Oh, Richard Virenque.
Richard Virenque.
C'est Richard Virenque aussi.
Virenque.
Allez, Virenque!
Allez, Virenque! Allez, Virenque! Virenque, c'est le meilleur, c'est super! Il va gagner!
Well, Virenque or Virenque, even the French don't know how to say his name, but either way, he climbs pretty well. And he is very, very popular indeed this year, and this, Paul, is an absolute killer of a stage.
A very tough stage indeed, but one which is normal for the Alps because it goes over some magnificent climbs. And Laurent Fignon, he's trying to be the first to go over most of them. The first col, the Col de Tamier, is followed very soon by the Col de Forclaz, then the Col de Courchevel, finally the Col de la Colombière before the riders drop down into Cluse, and that horrendous climb, the final one of the day, the Jouplan.
And this is the Col de la Forclaz right now, and Laurent Jalabert, he got clear on the ascent of the Col de Tamier, which came at 62 kilometres. Virenque was second over the top there. He led over the group 2 minutes and 5 seconds back. Jalabert continued over the Col de la Forclaz, and on the Col de Courchevel, he is still ahead and going very, very well. It must be a suicide mission, Paul. Virenque leads this group over now, 1 minute and 31 back.
But it's a strange move to see the man who's the #1 cyclist in the world going out on a long breakaway. I think that just the fact that he's done this is the fact that he just cannot win a stage. He's being pulled up now by the Festina squad, and once again, Richard Virenque trying to take over the lead on the Col de la Colombière. But look who's there, Bobby Ullrich.
And Ullrich has got second place there. He's come right to the fore on that climb. Udo Bolts went over in third place. We're looking now towards Morzine and the climb of the Col de Jouplan. And this is a real tough climb.
Well, this is the top of the Côte de Châtillon, a little climb just before the Jouplan. And in fact, this is Andrea Perron and Kevin Livingston. So the Americans having a very good finish to the Tour.
And what happened was Perron attacked, Livingstone went with him, 31 seconds at advantage there over Richard Virenque and Laurent Brochard. The clouds are coming down. They're in fact on top of Morzine and Voriaz there, which is high above the actual finish today. We are now on the start of the Jouplan, and again, Paul, the little man who's stayed hidden all day, has gone for this like a rabbit.
Well, that's amazing. Yesterday he got blown out in the big mountains. I thought he was over. He'd probably recuperating from the accidents that he'd had. He'd come back in the Tour of Italy. He'd crashed again. He rode superbly on the Alpe d'Huez, and I thought maybe that was it. But Pantani, well, he's certainly back.
Well, he's making his move. He's got to make it early on because it's a long climb. But as we said earlier, you've got this long 12-kilometre descent down to Morzine to the finish. And Pantani can be sent pretty quickly, but he'll want any time gaps on the way up. And he's found his acceleration here. Now, it's been a rough ride all day for these riders. Pantani has done absolutely nothing but follow the wheels, and now he's making his attack.
But you could almost regard this stage here as a mountaintop finish because they've changed the descent off the Jouplan here. The finish used to be 20 kilometres away from the summit, and today it's merely 12.
And that's down to the different way they approach Morzine now as they bring them in round the back instead of right round on a big loop. Anyway, back to the chasers now. Bjarne Riis, who's in charge of his little protege there, Jan Ullrich, and doing all the pacemaking here while Ullrich just follows. Concentration here on Pantani, who's tasted victory now at Alpe d'Huez and wants to repeat it here at Morzine. He usually wins 2 stages when he does get a shot at them, Paul.
Well, if he's come back to the old Marco Pantani that he was a few years ago, this year he's only had 1 victory, Phil, and that was just a couple of days ago on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez. But this climb is a very deceptive climb indeed. The Tour hasn't been here for several years. It's very steep, and riders using a gear around about a 39-tooth sprocket on the front and something like a 25-tooth sprocket at the back, so you get an idea of just how steep it is.
Well, they are very, very low gears indeed for top professional bike riders, but this is a tough climb. I remember seeing it when it was first climbed a few years back now into the 70s, and it really did cause carnage amongst the peloton.
Very difficult descent as well, although a very fast one. So if Pantani can build up a good enough lead, he stands a great chance of pulling himself back into the lead.
When he did accelerate right at the base of the climb, there was little or no resistance from the group. Here's the remnant of the group now. Riis leading Ullrich. Virenque never far away. Escartine is there. And the rider, I think, tacked on the back. I think it's Bobby Julich. But it is Bobby Julich, isn't it?
It's Bobby Julich there in the red crash helmet, so he's doing a great ride. The Americans certainly have improved over the last couple of days. They're getting stronger, I think, as the tour goes on. There's the Devil. He's going to have a hard time if he doesn't keep to the road, because one of these days, I think he's going to trip over his tail.
Over his tail, yes, let's hope not. There's the saddle of Marco Pantani, the yellow saddle, but it doesn't match the jersey yet. But he'll take a little bit more time out of Jan Ullrich, who is still this race very much under control. He's got Bjarne Riis, no less, keeping the pace and limiting the gains of Pantani on the climb. But now it looks as though Riis has fallen to the back of this group. That might be the first signs he's now taking the pressure, as in fact Virenque is the man applying the tourniquet.
Well, he's thinking about another stage victory. He knows the man in front, Marco Pantani, is a very good climber, and if anybody is going to catch him, only Richard Virenque can do that. Again, a little bit of picture breakup. That's because of the microwave link-up from the motorbike to the helicopters here, but Bjarne Riis are once again under pressure.
Well, this has been a great tour too for Richard Virenque. He's always been in the thick of the action. Bjarne Riis, well, he suffered virtually from day one after he finished behind in that first crash. He always seems to have been catching up rather than leading the tour. And now we're going back to the man who's leading the day. There's the banners for Cedric Vasseur. Well, that's what happens when you get the maillot jaune at any stage of the Tour de France. There are those people who are then not ashamed to put your name up front.
Cedric Vasseur a long way down in the overall standings. I'm pretty sure when we get to the top of this climb, there'll be a few Marco Pantani banners, but you can see Pantani now getting out of the saddle, accelerating when he can. He realises that if he's going to take this stage victory, and I think in the back of his mind what he's also thinking about is moving himself up back into third place in the overall standings, because he did use that yesterday to Bjarne Riis. What he really wants to do, I think, is get onto the podium, but also get another stage victory along the way.
Well, just 1 kilometre of the 11.5 kilometres to the summit for the chasers. A lot near the top will be Marco Pantani. The strange thing about this climb is, Paul, is where the banner isn't really the top of the climb.
Well, that's a bit of a shame. You do get to the top there, you see the King of the Mountains banner, you drop down for about 500 or 600 metres, then all of a sudden there's a nasty little kick just on the other side as one of the Vikings there running alongside Bjarne Riis, hopefully trying to give him a little bit of that Nordic spirit.
Third group on the road, as this is the third camera bike. This is the second camera bike, following second and third on the Tour de France today. And again, all of the work being left to Richard Virenque by Jan Ullrich. It's a great feeling to think that it's not your job to set the pace when you are leading the Tour de France. You've only got to defend your position.
Well, they're going over around about 35, 39 seconds in arrears. But it's amazing to look at the face of Jan Ullrich. No emotion at all. He just sits there. He's got a job in hand, and he just controls Richard Virenque.
Now, it looks as though they're going to be just around about a minute down there as they come up towards the line. Slightly less as Virenque gets more points. Second over the King of the Mountains to him. He's done enough today, in fact, to be confirmed as the winner of that competition. So as far as that competition is concerned, he's only got a ride to Paris now. He's Escartine. He goes over in fourth place. Riis is right with him as they now zip up for the chilly drop down towards the finish.
But what a position. Look at this. Marco Pantani right over the back of his saddle there. Because he doesn't have so much weight, he has to make himself as aerodynamic as possible to try and keep his speed very high. And once again, in second position there, Richard Virenque chasing, and Jan Ullrich there just backing off a little bit. I think trying to imitate the style and the lines that the Frenchman is taking around the corners.
Very narrow descent this, and you've got to stay vigilant. It's tricky. There's some very sharp bends here. Pantani is absolutely flying down. See how steep it goes down now. It is a very steep climb. There's 5 kilometres to go. That's 3 miles to the finish. And Pantani is actually still pulling time out of the others on the way down.
I'm not surprised the way he's going round of these corners. You see, not using the biggest gear. The interesting thing about a descent there, as once again Ullrich is off the back of the pace that Richard Virenque is setting. Virenque, in fact, not only is he attacking Ullrich on the climbs, but he's now decided to attack him on his weak spot, which is on the descents.
But you know, Jan Ullrich is nobody will ever say he's had an easy ride in this year's Tour de France, thanks to Virenque and some others, because they've always put him under pressure. They've tested him at every opportunity. We keep forgetting he is only 23.5 years of age, and he's still a lot to learn. He's only ridden the Tour de France twice, and he's finished second so far, and it looks like he's on course for his first victory now.
I tend to worry about the choice of his equipment as well. He's using these very light carbon fibre wheels, which may well be that they don't have the same rigidity as the steel wheels and spokes that are being used by Richard Virenque. So when he does go into those corners, maybe his bike's just a little bit spongy, causing him not to quite have the kind of morale he should have and the confidence going into these descents.
Well, you're right in that respect. He certainly doesn't have the same confidence as Virenque. I think that was the 2 kilometre to go banner. We've just shot under here. All the cheers for Marco Pantani, who continues to fly off the Juplin and head down into Morzine. Another town here in the Alps with absolutely packed with people. They've been queuing to get into the town for hours, and I never cease to be amazed how the police clear these roads like this with just about an hour and a half or so to go to the arrival of the Tour.
I'm not sure if it's by perfect planning or whether it's just Gallic luck when it comes down to getting all the cars off at the last possible moment. But here, still the chasers, Richard Virenque and Jan Ullrich. And Ullrich really does seem to be pushing himself just a little bit to try and stay on the wheel of Richard Virenque. But Virenque, I think, is going to fight this man all the way to Paris.
Well, here is Morzine now, as we're in the 1 kilometre to go. A huge crowd waiting to welcome Marco Pantani, who's going to get his second big stage win of this Tour. And, you know, he might reclaim back that 3rd place overall, which was taken off him the other day by Bjarne Riis.
Well, I'm sure that's in the back of his mind, but at the moment all he's thinking about is concentrating on getting to the finish, down in an aerodynamic position, as aerodynamic as a little climber can get, I suppose, as he comes into the town. That's the town square, normally devoid of people. Now the final little kick up to the finish line, and Pantani's going to make it number 2.
And this is a new finish for the Tour here in Morzine, and they've done well to find one that's so good in this town, which is full of narrow back streets and is usually very, very busy. But now they welcome again an Italian conqueror of the Alps. And the Alps too, by the way, yes, they run through Italy too. As he comes up now, Marco Pantani is going to take his 2nd stage win. He's going to gain a few more seconds, and it may be minutes over Jan Ullrich. We've got no time check at the moment, as Pantani prepares for the victory salute yet again. The little man won 2 stages last time he rode the Tour de France, and it looks like he's going to match it now with 2 stage wins, both coming here in the Alps, rather. His last victories were in the Pyrenees. A win for Marco Pantani, 5 hours and 57 minutes today. Another long day in the annals of the riders of the Tour de France. Here's the race for 2nd place, Paul, and Virenque is still dangling in front of Ullrich.
Well, he won't give up. He goes into all of these corners flat out, just hoping he can put a little bit of pressure on the yellow jersey. They're inside the town now. They're looking for the town square. But every time Jan Ullrich manages to bring himself back into the slipstream of the Frenchman. But I think he's going to pay for those efforts over the next few days, because since the start of this Tour de France, he's either been riding at the front or he's been chasing down Richard Virenque.
Well, it's a familiar scene. This is like a reenactment of the finish at Courchevel, and still leaving Virenque looking at the man behind and hoping he's not going to put in a sprint to take the 2nd place off him. And I don't think he is. He's come right onto the shoulder, though, of Richard Virenque. But as Virenque just winds it up a little bit, there's no sign of Jan Ullrich really digging for those pedals. So 2nd place, another formality at the end of the stage for Richard Virenque. He's the man that's done all the work, and I think this is the way Ullrich says, I'm happy with 3rd, you've got nothing on me, you've gained no time, and I'll stay right here. He allows the Frenchman his moment in front of his home crowd. Immensely popular this year. Richard Virenque gets 2nd on the stage, Ullrich takes 3rd. The gap, 1 minute and 17 seconds chipped off. Here's Bobby Julich.
Well, a great ride by him to stay with these leaders of the Tour de France. Francesco Casagrande on his shoulder, coming round the outside, looks like beat Zabel. Well, Bobby's not going to get 4th, but he's put in a great ride this afternoon. Phil, I think that's Zabel getting 4th place, Casagrande 5th, and Bobby, he's going to be happy with 6th.
And there, coming over the line, is Bjarne Riis, just about 2 minutes and 5 seconds down for him. Well, Hannibal crossed the Alps with the elephants, and in fact it was an elephant who won today. Elephantino. Marco Pantani was first home at Morzine.